You've probably seen those headlines saying that your protein powder might contain lead. Sounds scary, right? This story is going viral because fear sells. The reality is that it's not nearly as dangerous as it sounds. I've been a fat loss coach for over 25 years, and I've seen a lot of fear mongering in my time in the industry. So in this video, I'll show you where the lead actually comes from and what the science actually says about protein powder safety. Let's start off by looking at where this report came from. Consumer Reports sounds scientific, but it's not a research organization. It's a consumer magazine that buys products off store shelves, runs limited tests in their own labs, and publishes ratings for everything from vacuum cleaners to protein powder. Their goal is to create headlines that get attention, not to produce peer-reviewed science. In their protein powder investigation, they only tested a small number of products, mostly purchased from stores in New York, and then compared those results to California's outdated Prop 65 standards, which I'm going to explain in a minute. The result is a story that sounds dramatic, but lacks context and nuance. There was no control group, no replication, and no peer review. That's not how scientific research is done. And there's no way of knowing whether these few select brands represent the many thousands of other protein powders out there. And that's why understanding where your information comes from matters, because scary headlines aren't the same as scientific evidence. So let's start with where the lead really comes from. Most people think the lead is being added during manufacturing. It's not. Lead is part of the natural environment, and plants absorb it through soil, air, and water. That means that every plant-based food you eat, from wheat to rice to beans to cocoa, contains tiny amounts of it. And then, of course, animals eat those foods, and it's in their flesh, and they also have tiny amounts of it. Think about it like this. If you grow a potato in soil, it's going to take in whatever minerals are in that soil. The same goes for peas, which many plant-based protein powders contain, and also chocolate, coffee beans, tea leaves, pretty much every fruit and vegetable. So when you drink a plant-based protein shake, you're just consuming trace minerals that naturally exist in the food supply. Trace amounts of heavy metals are unavoidable in plant-based foods and supplements. They're part of how nature works, not a sign of poor quality. And yes, as humans, we are poisoning the earth, and those things are not getting better. So let's look at the real science on safe levels. Consumer Reports based their scary claims on California's Prop 65 limits. It sounds official, but those limits are more political than scientific. I've actually noticed the warning on some furniture that we've bought recently. They were set in 1986 without considering realistic exposure levels or updated toxicology data. So for example, in Europe, the safe daily level for lead is 1.5 micrograms per kilo of body weight. So for a 70 kilo, 154 pound person, that's about 105 micrograms per day. California's Prop 65 limit is about 210 times lower than that. In other words, the article used an extreme, outdated standard that doesn't match what scientists or regulators actually use. Your body can handle far more than what that law allows, safely. And if you're thinking, well, isn't it better to have no chemicals in your food? Literally everything is a chemical, and trace minerals like lead are impossible to avoid. Yes, we do want to reduce the amounts as much as we can, but it's not always possible. Here's the most important concept that I'm sure you've heard before. The dose makes the poison. Exposure doesn't mean danger. Your body can safely handle small amounts of environmental lead. If it couldn't, we'd all be dead. Even tap water can have 15 parts per billion of lead. If you drink 2 liters of tap water a day, that's roughly 10 micrograms of lead. You're still far below any level that would be linked to harm. Obviously, for vulnerable groups, children, pregnant women, we want those levels to be even lower. And of course, you want to reduce them as much as possible. But if your protein powder contains 1 or 2 micrograms, it's really nothing to worry about. Toxicity happens when exposure is high and constant, not the trace levels found in normal foods. but I'll put it into perspective with real foods that you're probably eating. If we measure the lead content naturally found in foods, here's what we get. One medium apple has 1.5 to 2 micrograms of lead. One medium carrot has 2.3 micrograms. 10 grams of dark chocolate, which is only 2 squares, has 1.2 to 1.8 micrograms. Half cup of cooked peas, 1.7 micrograms. A cup of green tea, which I'm drinking right now, 1.5 micrograms, and half cup of cooked white rice has 2 micrograms. So if your protein powder has about 2 micrograms per serving, that's the same as a serving of vegetables, fruit, or rice. Most people aren't warning you to avoid vegetables and fruit because of lead, except maybe the carnivore diet people, and they don't like science anyway because it goes against what they believe in. Consumer Reports wouldn't tell you to avoid all produce based on their numbers because it would make them look ridiculous. This is the same fear-based playbook that the Environmental Working Group uses, EWG. You might have seen their Dirty Dozen list of fruits and vegetables. I even shared it over a decade now, but still. I used to buy into it until I found out that their purpose is to promote organic food and farming, and they get their funding from organic food manufacturers. They're not a scientific organization. They make money by scaring people into buying organic food, by telling them to avoid perfectly healthy, conventional fruits and vegetables. As a side note, the evidence says that organic fruits and vegetables aren't any healthier than conventional produce. And organic farming still uses pesticides, but different kinds that aren't any safer. It's more about marketing than actual health. I used to buy into the whole organic thing too. I was always looking for organic fruits and vegetables. I thought they were healthier. But the most important thing is to eat more vegetables and fruit because most of us don't eat enough. This latest protein powder panic works the same way as organic food. It's great for clicks, not for scientific truth. So let's look at what the actual regulators say. Both the FDA and the European Food Safety Authority know that trace metals are impossible to eliminate from food. The goal isn't zero exposure. The goal is staying well below the level that could ever cause harm. And all of these protein powders fit into those levels. Now, the supplement industry isn't well regulated. We all know it's a problem and there's no easy fix because it comes down to money. If you want to feel a bit safer, buy from supplement companies that use third-party testing. Certifications like NSF and Informed Sport mean every batch has been checked and they're under the global safety thresholds. If you're still uneasy, choose whey protein instead of plant-based protein if you can. Whey comes from dairy, not plants, so it naturally contains lower trace minerals. The cows are filtering some of the lead out for you. Protein powder is one of the easiest and safest ways to hit your daily protein target. Research shows it supports fat loss, muscle gain, and recovery, especially for people over 40. You don't need protein powder, and if you choose to get your protein with only whole foods, that's fine too. But I want to reassure people who rely on protein powder to meet their needs. I haven't been using protein powder that much lately, but I do occasionally use it and I still plan to use it. Protein powder, when third-party tested, can be a safe, effective, and convenient part of a healthy diet, especially if you're over 40 and focused on staying lean and strong as you get older. So don't let fear decide what you eat. Let a bit of reason do that instead. For more straight talk about fat loss over 40, watch this video here.